attempts to answer a question that's quite often asked by anyone who wants to implement a compiler, particularly if they're going to pay someone else to do it. How much does a compiler cost? And a common scenario this comes in is you've started doing a small processor, a small little RISC-V processor, and maybe it's only a little embedded thing, and you're going to hand code a little bit of assembly code on there, use off-the-shelf compiler. And then you do a second version, it's bigger, and you have more people programming on it. And now you have lots of people using it, and you've got custom instruction extensions, and you want actually to have proper full language support. You don't want to take the off-the-shelf GCC because it hasn't got your custom extensions in. Let's have a look at what's involved in a compiler. You've of course got the compiler, and if it's GCC it supports loads and loads of languages, and you'll have an assembler, and then you've got libraries because you've got to link those in to make it work, and you'll have low-level utilities so you can analyze your program, and of course you need a debugger, and the debugger is going to need a simulator and a disassembler, and so you have a tool to generate those. So that's what makes up a tool chain. And the great thing about being open source is, of course, most of this has already been written for you. For RISC-V, you can actually take a complete basic RISC-V toolchain off the shelf, download it from the GNU repositories. And the same is true of Clang LLVM, and these days RISC-V's in Clang LLVM, and some of the components have slightly different names, but those are the components you need. So how much does it cost? Well, because you are building on top of established technology, because you're not actually having to do it all from scratch, we can get to a proof of concept that demonstrates all the features you've got, all your custom extensions. You've added a DSP extension or something like that. We can make sure the assembler, the disassembler, the simulator, the debugger, they all support that, and demonstrate the idea works in about 3 months, 60 days. Okay? And once we've done that, we'll know what works. We may have exposed aspects of your extension that don't work, and because we can do this with simulated models, we don't even have to have silicon. You may have the opportunity to go back and revise your instruction set extension. Perhaps you hadn't thought about some of the consequences for code size, or you've missed some potential optimizations. And then we can spend another 3 months, and we can take all that functionality and put it in there, make sure that every corner case of the functionality works, make sure that all the optimizations are there, potentially add some custom optimizations. If you've added some particular manipulations, you want to recognize those in your C and C++ code and make sure that they're automatically generated into binary. You don't have to do it by hand. And then the most important stage, testing and optimization. GCC and LLVM actually use the same execution test suite usually, and that's about 150,000 tests just for C and C++. We run all of those and make sure they all work. We add extra tests, so you've done your RISC-V instruction set extension, and have we added tests for it? What more tests do we need to make sure it's properly covered? And we don't just do the regression tests, we'll do performance tests, we'll do benchmarking, and we'll run your own in-house custom tests for your application. And that takes around another 60 days. And lastly, the bit everyone forgets is deployment. When you ship a new tool, if you don't show people how to use it, they will tend to burn themselves. And a lot of this is acting as first responder to bug reports, and most of those bug reports won't be bugs, they'll be pilot error because someone's not understood how to use this new feature. And in particular, people can get very surprised at how effective modern compilers are at optimizing code. So if we look at that, to take a compiler from scratch with all your new extensions you've added to RISC-V, because we're bolting on something that already exists, we're looking at achieving the whole of that in one engineer year. And that's for a decent sized complexity. If you've got a tiny little extension, it's not going to take that long. But if we're looking like a major instruction set extension with lots of options, then that's about the scale of it is. So that is one answer to the question of how long does it take to construct a compiler. Thank you.